Bismillah Rahman Rahim. This is our another important chapter, overcoming resistance to change, from the book of experiential approach to organizational development, Donald R. Brown. Already, some of the students shared with me this book in soft form. If the students still don't have this book in the soft form, I can also share with you as well. So let's start with this chapter. This chapter is very important after discussing the role of the diagnosing phase and the diagnostic process. This chapter has very importance. When we're talking about overcoming resistance and when we're talking about the change, so when we are introducing change in the organization, there are a lot of people who resist for the change. They don't agree with the change process. They don't accept the change process. They don't even recognize the change process. So these are all the things which create a lot of mess in the organization when the change agent or organizational development or practitioners are talking about um, organizational development, or they are talking about change management. So so this chapter is related with the how that you can overcome that resistance. What are the factors? What are the actual cause of the resistance for the change? What kind of the strategies that we would recognize to increase the motivation to change, uh, for that development process? Then uh, diagnose forces, diagnose the forces, or diagnose the driving forces and the resisting forces for the organizational change. Experience reactions to a change situation. So these are all the mix of the discussions, and these are the mix of the topics which we will discuss in this chapter. So how can we compete with these kind of the problems, and how can we overcome that? The major thing is that how can we overcome the process, the resistance process in the organization. These are some of the examples related with the ties or metal is one of the metal is one of the examples related with the short case study is already in the book is available, that the tire industry is going through a radical change. Metal company has a history of nearly falling apart every decade since the 1970s. um, the CEO, Accret, moving metal to redefine core business, better control inventory, streamline manufacturing, develop more ties in house, expand overseas as ties mature in the US. So these are some of the things which, in the case studies of the ties, they has the kind of the dubious history. Metal has the kind of the dubious history, as well as that they would like to avoid in the future as well. But due to the reasons that in the 2000 century, in the 2000, sorry, in the 2000 and onward, the CEO Robert Ackert is basically take charge of the company and moving company, which is more related with with some kind of the competition with related with the Walt Disney, and as well as they are also move further, they later they move on to the agreements, licensing agreements with the Walt Disney. And these are all the things which are related with this company, and they ultimately change their company in a more profitable, where in the means that they actually, international, their actually international sales previously was 31%. But with the strategy, with the changing strategy of the Robert, they change a lot in the company, they invent a lot in the company, reinvent a lot in their companies, and that 31% of the profit, 31% of the sales move to the 50% of the sales. So this increase a big change, but a better change in the organization, with a bit different streamline changing with the agreement with the Walt Disney, and they designed some of the ties for the toys for the Walt Disney company, and they're manufacturing a lot of things. So this makes things reinvent in the company. Now, the change and reinvent. What does it mean? Change and reinvent. Change and reinvent means that faced with the continuing economic pressure and increasing competition in the 21st century, you can say that uh, as we previously we quote the company of the metal and many other organizations are being forced to radically change and reinvent their processes, re-engineering, right sizing, and downsizing are frequent responses to these pressures. Change programs aimed at increasing productivity by means of organizational downsizing were very common in the past decade. Then, but when many surveys conducted but when we look out to the organizations, we found that there are some of the changes have unintended consequences as well as. So these are some of the change. These are some of the aspects which we will discuss in this change and reinvent. That you are seeing on the screen that many organizations being forced to radically change. Organizations face major challenge in the managing change. So organization need capacity to adapt quickly. People are focused of most serious challenges, large scale changes often incur significant problems and challenges. Organization, as you all know, that organizations today face major challenge in managing change effectively. The costs are often high when organization fails to change in the ways necessary for success. Organization in dynamic environment must have the capacity to adapt quickly in order to survive. This is also one of the aspects. Any business that is satisfied with the present state of affairs in itself, we can say that they are satisfying with their strategies, sitting still or moving at snail's pace is effectively moving backward. These are one of the aspects which we already discussed, that I already told you that all those organizations who remain static by terms as far as the operation is concerned, means that they are not, their R&D department is not working properly, or in fact we can say that their R&D department is not exist in the organization, and they are not taking the R&D department seriously, and they are not taking the development part in the organization. So this creates a lot of problems for the organization. This creates a lot of issues for the organization and make them backward for the success. This is some of the things. Then the most serious challenges to improving programs has the same focused people, managers developing and implementing programs to keep today's organizations competitive in a tough, constantly changing environment must deal with resistance to change as well. So this is how you can say that, for example, the Opel plant, the GM's Opel plant, the 35,000 workers almost working there was reorganized into teams of 5 to 15 members. Their CEO or their managers changed the team structure. Are they focused on the team structure? That team approach has proven to be successful, but only when cultural and communication barriers are overcome. This is one of the challenge. Culture is one of the challenge, as we already discussed in the chapter of the culture as well as. And I already discussed with you the role of the culture, and I discussed with you that one of the person is rebellion, the one of the person is the conformity, and one of the person is the creative individualism. This part is totally related with the culture. So whenever we are talking about reinvent, you have to talk about culture, or you have to discuss about the culture aspects. So this 5 to 15 members team has proven to be successful when they accept the cultural norms and when they accept the all reinventing process. In most of the cases, the speed and complexity of change may severely test the capabilities of managers and members unless members prepare themselves emotionally for change. So this is how we can say that. Then The other thing is that you can say that once organization and its key members, like the personal level, on a personal level, decide to implement a change program, they have to energize the forces, um, favoring favoring it. So this chapter is all about to discuss these elements, these aspects, in a very important aspect. Then another thing, on a personal level, when you're talking about on a personal level, change represents the alteration of change, set patterns of behaviors, defined relationships with others, work procedures, and job skills. On an organizational, change means that policies, procedures, sunk cost as well, organization structures, manufacturing processes, and workflows will no longer the same. So these are also the one of the aspects. So we can discuss in this change level the set patterns of behaviors, defined relationships with others, work procedures, and job skills. These are all things which is then discuss in the changes in the personal level. Then when talking about changes on organizational level, policies, procedures, organization structures, manufacturing processes, workflows, these are all the aspects which is related with the organizational problems. Organizational problems emerge and manages by the managers, which attempt to take corrective actions in the organization, improve that things and resolve the problems as effectively encountered with the associated human resistance as well as to changing the patterns of the work behavior, or you can say that workflows in the organization. So this changes on the organizational level. Then another important thing is that the life cycle of resistance to change. There are five phases that we discussed in the life cycle of resistance to change. This is very important. Let me clear you that this is one of the important part of this chapter. In fact, let me assure you, organization programs such as the downsizing, re-recognizing, re-engineering, and total quality managements. These are all the things which is very important, which we later discuss, but give you a background for the life cycle of resistance to change, which involve innovation and changes that probably encounter some degree of resistance as well as whenever the organization is talking about, whenever they are discussing, and whenever the organization is going for a downsizing, they will face resistance. Whenever they are talking about re-engineering, they will also for facing the resistance in the organization. So then when we're talking about resistance, so resistance is also related with the hostility and conflict in the organization. Resistance is ultimately creating conflict in the organization, no doubt about it. So this is phase number one, that only few people who see need for change. Resistance appears massive on stage number one, on a phase number one. When you're talking about the life cycle of resistance for the change, there are few people who see the need for the change and they take reform seriously, and not the large part. You can say that um, in an organization of the 2000 organization, where 2000 workers, so only 5 or 6 workers can accept that change, and the rest of the more than the 1995 people will not accept that change. So for this, organization need to struggle a lot to re-energize and reform all the people in that case. A lot of people, they be openly criticize, ridiculize the change, and whatever the methods the organization has at its disposal and thinks appropriate to handle the force to confirm established organizational norms, the resistance looks massive. This is the number one thing here. So these are all the one of the aspects that these one of the IBM's business, for example, patrons has said, partners has said For example, trying to get action from IBM is like swimming through giant pools of peanut butters. So it's like very difficult that whenever you're talking about change or whenever you are discussing about a change, so it's very difficult for people to accept whatever you are saying it at the start of the changing process. People will never accept change until and unless they not see it any significant change in the change process. Next thing is the next phase. Forces for and against change become identifiable. The next phase, at the movement for change begins to grow, the forces for and against it become identifiable. The change is discussed and is more thoroughly understood by more of the organization's members. A greater understanding may lessen the perceived threat of the change. In time, novelty and strangeness of change tends to disappear. So this is how we can say that at the time people is gradually understand the change process, they understand about the whole change thing. So they realize that change is gradually is has to be happened. You can say that change is important for the organization. Next, phase number three is direct conflict and showdown between forces. This phase probably means life or death to the change, and as well as this phase will probably mean life or death effort as well as because the exponents of change often underestimate the strength of their opponents. Those in organization who see a change as good and needed often find it difficult to believe how far the opposition will go to put a stop to the change as well as. This is how we can say that. And then phase number four is remaining resistance, seen as stubborn possibility that resistors will mobilize support to shift balance of power. This is another thing in the that now you are talking about the balance of the power. Now you are talking about that wisdom is necessary in dealing with the overt opposition and also with the sizable element who are not openly opposed to change but are not convinced for its benefit as well as. So this is a balance of the power that you can discuss it. There are so many stubborn people, they not accept the change, they will not possibly accept the change as well as. So these are all the things. Then in the phase number five is the last phase is that resistance to change. Resistors to change are as few and as alienated as were advocates in first phase. So all of them is now in the favor, regardless of some of the resistance is still there in the organization's change program. Will at some extent evolve through the five five phases which we can say that. So when you're talking about the resistance, then we are talking about that there is also a surface of in a small verbal disagreements, people question is reluctance and so forth. So by giving them a better understanding, these will come up our advocates, the people more, and they can overcome the resistance for the organization as well. Then when you're talking about the next aspect, that the major factors affecting success of change uh, is the advocates. You can also I can give you another short kind of the case study. I would share with you through WhatsApp and as well as through our LMS, so you can answer those questions as well as. So this is a small five stages of resistance and change, and followed by the four questions. You have to answer the four questions which is related with the five phases. You have to read the small case study based on the five phases, and then based on that five cases, there is four questions related with the five phases, so you can answer them. Then the other aspects, major factors affecting success of the change, advocates of the change, disagreement or disagree of change, time frame, impact of culture, evaluation of change. These are all the necessary aspects which is related with the factors affecting success of change. Change an organization involve modifying the existing system, no doubt about it. Structure, structure and culture to some different standards or level for performance. The purpose of change is to increase the organization effectiveness or to even ensure its survival. So these the things is we discuss in this part. Another thing is that there are some of the managers considered change is to be critical to the success of the organization, that they continuously search for ways to make positive organizational changes. The major factors affecting the success of change include the advocates of change, that the degrees of the change, the time frame, impact, and these all that. One by one, we will discuss it. The number one is that advocates of change. This is the success of change. As you're seeing that advocates of the change is coming to the success of these all things. These are all uh, five parts as directly coming to the success of change. How they work or how they coming down to the change, coming related to the success of change is that the person who spearheads a change program is very often the most important force for change. That is the advocates of change. The change advocate may be a CEO for a company-wide change program, or a manager for a divisional change. You can say that a change agent, or you can say that a practitioner, or you can say that a consultant is also the advocates of the change. So these are all the members who are in somehow they can the advocates in some of the situation, and internal and external OD practitioners may brought in to assist in the change project. Then the second thing is the degree of the change. A second change program is the projected extent of the change. Is it relatively minor, such as a change in a small order form? That's how important the change programs. The degree of the change is explained by the managers, and how your new product line is important, or how you are going for the downsizing. The degree the change, the greater the degree of the change, the more difficult it is implement successfully. These are all the very important points that we can discuss in the degree of the change. Then the time frame is very important, that you can explain the time frame for the change, that you can complete this change program in the next 6 months, in the next 1 year, or in the next 2 years, or in the next 3 years, or if this is a 10 years program. So you have to explain it, the time frame as well as, and the managers must go for that time frame. This time frame is very important, that either that change is minor or implemented over several months or years. So this is a very significant aspect that you can explain it in a very important manner. Then another thing is the impact of culture, which is very important. So many times I already discussed with you that how much people take that things very importantly, how you can overcome the challenges, how you can overcome the conflicts between a top management and a middle management and a lower management, how you can overcome the practices, the prevailing behavior in the organizations, how you can improve the management. There's so many things that you can that relate with the cultural aspects. So another and the last one is the evaluation of the change. Finally, the last four is in the change process, in the system of evaluating change. Standards or levels of performance are developed to measure the degree of change and its impact on the organization's effectiveness. So these are all the changing factors are the related with the elements. Then moving further is the already I discussed with you the advocates of change. Person leading change program is often most important force for the change, internal or external. I discussed with you change is minor or major, the degree of the change. Then the time frame is also very important, and how much you can discuss the change time frames with people, impact of the culture, and greater the resistance and difficulty to implement the change, evaluation on the culture, and then a change model. A change model is also another important topic. There are two major considerations in organizational change are degree of change, impact on organizational culture, minor change, and minor impact on culture. If there is a minor change, so that might be a minor impact on culture. Before going to discuss it, why would not we see this picture first or model this one? Seeing in the lower part here, in the lower part, you can see it. This is number one is the lower resistance. High chance of success when there is a low resistance or the degree of change is minor. You're seeing that in the horizontal part, the degree of the change. In the vertical part, you are seeing that the impact of culture. When there is a low resistance and a minor change, that's the first part is a minor change and minor impact on culture. The second thing is you can discuss is the uh, minor change but major impact on culture. This is the here you are seeing that the degree of the change is minor but the impact on culture is high. So there is some resistance when the change is minor, the but the impact on the culture is high. Some resistance can be expected in this part, in this part of the in this part of the process, or in this part of the change process, depending on the size, the threat, and the speed of the change. The next thing is the third part is there is some resistance. Again, moderate to high chance of success. There is a moderate chance of success, and in the third part, there is a moderate to high chance that major change, minor impact, major. Now you're seeing that this degree of change is going to the major. Here is the degree of change is major, but impact on culture is minor. So major change, but minor impact on culture. When the change is major, but the impact on existing culture is minor, some resistance is likely, but good management can probably overcome. Now the question is that there you are putting a major change in the organization, but not give the major impact on the culture. This means that you are not changing the structure. This means that you are improving the development part. This means that you are changing the uh, in your product line as well as. So these are all the aspects that can be discussed with the major changes, but that has very minor impact on culture. Last thing is that if you're seeing is that high resistance means that a major change and as well as major impact on culture. This might be the case when you are changing the structure. This might be the change when you are going for the downsizing. This might be a chance when an organization is going for a giant venture. This might be a chance when the other company is take over the your company. So this is also the major change and as well as the major impact. When the change is large and the impact on the existing culture is high, the greater resistance can be threatened. So this is very important. So this is the quadrant number one is make minor change and minor impact. This is the quadrant number one. This is the quadrant number one. This is quadrant number two. This is quadrant number three, and this is quadrant number four. These are all four quadrants that explain the whole phenomena of the change model. So they are going for, and I already explained the all quadrant in a detail. So you can go it back to this slides and listen my lecture as well as, and you will understand these all four quadrant. I explained all that four quadrant. Next part is the driving forces towards acceptance of change. Driving forces are anything that increases organizations to implement proposed change. Driving forces include dissatisfaction with the present situation, external pressures, uh, pressures toward change. These are all the things. Dissatisfaction with the present satisfaction with the present situation. Sorry. So these are all the driving forces. Sometimes an organization is just dissatisfied or even troubled by its situation. It may or not know why it is dissatisfied, but it has a desire for relief. This could be likened to a person who is sick. You can say that there are different people that different mindset. They accepted or not accepted the different kind of the process. Then the next thing is the momentum towards the change process. So the next thing is the momentum toward change. Momentum once change underway, certain forces tend to push change along. Those involved probably become committed. When money is committed to start a change, organization likely will continue. Change in one part of organization may set off change reaction in other parts as well as. So once change program is implemented, so the OD program team built around involvement. This is the role of the OD team. You can say that the role of the change management teams to implement or to force up the change programs. So this is very important thing that this is our when you can say that the OD team or the OD practitioners are the fundamental programs, are the fundamental people, are the fundamental thing that can be effective change in the organization. So this how we can say that the momentum towards the changes. If you can go to the previous slides as well, the driving force is the another aspect is the external pressures towards change is also one of the aspect that is related with the driving forces are the external pressures. As here we see that external pressures, so by external pressures we can say that the a worldwide recession as well as the international competition as well as and a lower uh, lowering of the trade barriers and the structure of the organization, the structure of the organization of the other organization, the structure of the competitive organizations. We can also relate it with the other aspects as well as. So these are all the issues. These are all the aspects which is linked with the organizational dynamics, which is linked with the organization structure as well. Then uh, the next thing is the third part is the motivation by the manager. This is also very important. The manager or advocate of change becomes motivating force. Top management's encouragement can motivate the change process. So these are all the one of the important elements or one of the important aspects which becomes important for motivating the people. Another thing is that when you're talking about our changing world's globalization of world's business, globalization has occurred for hundreds of years but recently experienced exponential change or exponential growth. Our changing world, the reasons for increase includes improvements in communications and transportation, more efficient, more efficient global banking system, surpluses in capital in US, Japan, Europe, worldwide, lowering of trade barriers. These are all the international challenges, and these are all the international world. By 2000, number of multinational companies above 63,000. 1,000 largest multinational companies account for 80% of the world industrial population. Multinational companies are based all over the world. US captured 37%, Japan 21%, and the Europe is 25%, also based in the developing countries as well as. Another part of the discussion, another part of the chapter is restraining forces blocking implementation of change. Uncertainty regarding change, fear of unknown, disruption of routine, loss of benefits. So these are all the aspects which is related with the uh, you can say that the blocking implementation of the change program as well as. Uh, so when we are talking about the restraining forces, so we will first discuss the first element is basically uncertainty regarding change. So when you're talking about the uncertainty regarding the change, is the important point is that the comfort zone. Whenever we are talking about a restraining forces are the blockage for the implementation of change is that the comfort zone. People don't leave their comfort zone. People are very good in their comfort zone, whatever they are doing it, whatever the kind of the practicing they are promoting in the organization, whatever the kind of the activities they are doing in the last 10 years are from the last 10 years, They don't want to change it at all because they don't want to decrease their comfort zone, or they don't want to, you can say that, come out from their comfort zone, which is very important for them as well. As organization members have a psychological resistance to change. This is number one thing, because they want to avoid uncertainty. Past ways of doing things are well known and predictable. This is another thing. Uh, an unwillingness to give up a familiar task, our relationships may cause resistance. So these are the basic reasons. These are the basics cause of the, you can say that, the cause of the resistance is, that you can say that the, as also the comfort zone as well. As I would refer to the example of the IDEO, the consulting firm, specialization of the in motivating and innovation, as well as that believe that who are in their comfort zone are not aware of a need to change and unlikely to resist change. According to the Douglas Solomon, on in his book, he says that there are still people who say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Until and unless you cannot see it any challenges, or until and unless you cannot see it any worse situation, I might say that you cannot go for any change. Our organization is not go for any change, which is very vulnerable for the organization, which is very dangerous for the organization. And this is the point where organization face a lot of the problems when they are not moving, or when they are not coming out from their comfort zone. And I don't think these companies are in a good position to really change, because they are happy with they where they are, their comfort zone actually. So they have, so you have to have a certain degree of discomfort in your business to be willing to make the changes that are necessary. So these are all the words which, written in the Douglas Solomon book, and he is said that there is more of the challenges, that people are not going for the changes, and people are not going for any kind of the significant movement, they do not leave their comfort zone, which create a lot of problems for the organization. Next thing is the fear of the unknown. Already clear to all of you that a large part of the resistance to change stems from a fear of the unknown. People become anxious when they have to exchange the old and familiar for something new. An uncertain disruption of routine life will be disturbed, or loss of the benefits they have, the kind of thing that what's in it for me when they are talking about change. So what kind of the benefits are associated for me, and how can I take the benefits from these all the aspects. Then threat to security, threat to position power, redistribution of the power, disrupt existing social networks, conformity to norms and cultures. So these are all the aspects which is the most elements, that is people are more familiar with these things, and they do not disrupt, they do not want to disrupt. These are all things. So these are all the reasons that create a lot of resistance for blocking the change as well. As if you still not clear with these things, so I can elaborate, and you can ask from me through LMS, or you can ask from the our WhatsApp group as well. As so, some of the part I am remaining, I'm not explaining intentionally to engage you as well as, or to listen my videos as well. As previously I observing that most of the people, most of the students are not properly, are not giving the feedback, or not listening the my videos completely. They just see it and just not completely watch or listen the videos as well. As so, I not explain these are the parts like threat to security, threat to position power, redistribution of power. You yourself explore it, and if you still not clear it, you can ask questions from me as well as. Next thing is driving forces and restraining forces act in the tandem. Effective change programs increase driving forces and decrease restraining forces. As previously we discussed, force field analysis is useful way to view driving and restraining forces. So go to in the previous chapters and see it. What is the force field analysis model? If you still not clear with the force field model, let me ask. You you can ask from me as well as so I can discuss you again the force field analysis as well as the strategy to lessen resistance is the effective communication, create a vision for the organization, participate and involvement of members, facilitations and support, negotiation and agreement. So, in the next part, we will discuss, in the next part of this chapter, we will discuss these things in a very detailed. So far today, I'll complete my lecture, and this is the first part of this chapter. Later on we will discuss the another part of this chapter as well as. If you have any questions you can ask from me, so we will discuss it in a detailed. Thank you very much.